Once again, welcome to the September 2013 KeyShot webinar titled Developing Color Studies and Product Variations. My name is Rex Roberts and I'm a digital media artist here at Luxion. And this is going to be an intermediate level demonstration targeted specifically at industrial design and toy design. As you can see, I'm going to be using this model of a Nerf gun that I got from Turbo Squid. But some of the techniques that I'm going to be showing you guys are applicable across pretty much all industries. So this should be a fun and exciting webinar. I'm going to be demonstrating using KeyShot 4.2 beta and providing a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the new features and functionality expected for the release. So let's open up a session of KeyShot 4.2 beta, Pro version. And before we import our model, let me show you just a couple of these new features that we've implemented. So if we go up to our Preferences menu, we can now set the number of cores that we want our machine to use. So the machine I'm on now has 24 cores, and we can set aside a couple of those cores for other CPU intensive applications such as GoToWebinar to run simultaneously. While we're here in Preferences, you can go to the Interface tab now and see a selection for theme. So you can use the traditional light theme, or now we've implemented a dark theme. But for the case of this webinar, we'll use light since this is what we are all used to seeing. Okay, so I just want to make sure that there isn't any lag. Can you guys verify that I'm now showing an empty KeyShot scene? No lag. Awesome. So that's good. We found the solution to that. So then let's go ahead and import a model. Okay, so the Nerf gun that I downloaded from Turbo Squid was a 3ds Max file. So I have a few different BIPs here that I exported from 3ds Max using the plugin. Now these BIPs have not yet been opened in KeyShot. So what I want to do to make sure that I am importing this with my desired location and size is that I'm actually going to import the BIP instead of just opening it. Just to make sure that I have keep original location and keep original size selected. Now if you do have these selected, these will save as your default, but just to make sure, so we can confidently add additional models or attachments or configurations and make sure that they're going to be in the same location and the same scale as each other. Okay, so we will go ahead and import our model. And now if we select our model in the scene tree here in the project window, you might notice that the orange highlight is a little thicker than it has been in the past. So we've actually implemented a faster object highlight algorithm. So it should be selecting and highlighting your parts much faster, especially when using very complex scenes with a lot of geometry. This process is greatly improved and is going to be a lot faster now. So let's go ahead and just rename this from our Properties tab. Okay. And let's take a look at our color library. So I want to create a custom color palette for my various color studies for the Nerf gun here. So I did a little bit of research and took a look at some different colorways that Nerf is using. So I chose these three, and let's start with the traditional end strike yellow and orange. So I have dual monitors here, but for these purposes I'm going to keep this image on this side of the monitor so you guys can see, and we'll sample some colors from this image to create our custom color library. So let's go ahead and create a folder. Select the top level in which you want that folder to go into. So we'll click to add a new folder, and we'll call this Nerf. And then within the Nerf folder, I'll add another folder, and we can call this traditional. Okay. Now to add colors to this folder, just right-click in the empty area here, select Add Color, and then we can go ahead and use our color picker to start sampling these colors and naming them and saving them to our library. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do this for the various colors on this product. And we also have a black in there. I'll just bring a black over from my basic colors folder. Okay, so now we have our color palette for our first color study. I'm actually going to create the palettes for the additional two now using the same process. So selecting the Nerf folder, adding one for the Elite colorway, and one for the Sonic colorway. So the Elite is this clear green and orange. Okay, well that should be good enough for now. So another way of adding colors is to use the color finder. So if you have colors existing in your library already, or you'd like to use say some Pantone colors, we can go in here, use our color finder, which sometimes gets hidden here if you don't have this window expanded enough. But we can click our color finder to find the perceptually nearest color in this folder selection. So if we were looking for this yellow, then we can select that yellow, say OK, and then it'll provide us with the 5 nearest Pantone matches for that color swatch. So this just depends on your workflow, if you like to create your own custom color palettes or if you're using Pantone or RAL colors. Okay, so now that we have our color palettes created, we can go ahead and start applying materials. So another new feature we've added in 4.2 is the ability to change the material type of multiple materials at a time. So we could have a multi-selection of materials, or we can just select the top level hierarchy of that part, right-click, navigate to material, and change material type. And as you can see, 3ds brings in these blend shaders as advanced material within KeyShot. So then we'll go ahead and just change this to a plastic type, select OK. And so now if we go to our material in-project material palette, we can see the materials that are applied in the scene, and now these have all changed to plastic materials. So then we can go ahead and go over to the color swatches we just created, and we can start dragging those onto our model. Okay, also in 4.2, we can now drag color swatches onto the in-project material palette. Let's just update those real quick. And you can see these are still diffuse because the default value for the specular is white. So then what we want to do is change the specular color for all of these plastics to white, so then we can get some nice white highlights there. So I'll just go through each material at a time. We've added the in-project material palette to the materials tab, so we can just go through these one by one, double-clicking to edit and bringing that white swatch on for the specular. Okay, so now that we have a starting point for our materials and we have some geometry in our scene, let's make sure that we save this file so we don't lose anything. Okay. So then let's go ahead and import some more geometry. I have some attachments here. As you can see in the image, this gun comes with some additional attachments. So then here is my file with just the attachments. Bring that into the scene, and again making sure to keep original location and size so that those parts snap right into place. Now when bringing in additional pieces of geometry, you see an option for materials here. So in this case we can select to retain materials, and what this will do is take the original materials or the existing materials in your scene, and we'll apply those to pieces of geometry that use the same source material. So in 3ds Max I named my materials based on their parts, so these are the material names here, So then when I bring in this second piece of geometry, it's going to reference those names and apply these materials. If you have a material template created, also under this materials area will be the option to apply a material template, and we'll go over that a little bit later. So I'm just going to import using retain materials, and these attachments come into place with the link materials automatically applied to those parts, so saves you a little bit of time from having to reapply those materials again. Okay, so let's start getting into material templates. But before we do so, we need to actually go ahead and save our materials and create our little custom material folder for this project. So we can either put it on the top level or we can select to put it in plastics. I'll just go ahead and put it in plastics here. So then add this folder as Nerf materials. Select OK. Now new in 4.2 is the ability to save your materials directly from the in-project material palette. So we can drag and drop these, or we can right-click either a single selection or a multiple selection and save to library, selecting the folder within our plastics here, Nerf materials. Okay. And then our materials are automatically saved to the library there. So since we will be creating a material template from this scene, we actually need to update it with the saved materials from the library. So I'll quickly just update these, drag them on. Okay, so now those are all updated, and we can open up our material templates. So going to View, Material Templates. So within Material Templates, you have a source and a new material. So in this case, the source is going to be by the original material names that I applied in 3ds Max. So the names here, barrel, forestock, etc. So then if I go ahead and add a new template, since I have my materials already applied in the scene, I can add it automatically, and I'm going to reference the original material as the source. So now my template is populated. Quickly rename it, and you can see that the original source material is here and the new saved material is here. For a default material, this is going to be if we bring in a model that contains these materials but maybe has additional materials, we can assign the default material to apply to all of those additional sources that aren't listed here in the template. So maybe just a hard, shiny, plastic black. Okay, so we've just created a material template. And let's go ahead and test that out by opening up a new scene. And I'm going to import a different Nerf gun into the scene. And upon import, I'm going to select to use my Nerf traditional material template. And it appears that it was not applied. Looks like the names were instanced here. Well, let's see if I can show you how it works if I just bring in the same gun and apply that template I just created. So it looks like the material names, the source names, were actually instanced on that other gun. But you can see how it works. So if you import a new piece of geometry that contains those source names, will have those materials automatically applied. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about model sets, since we have a few different pieces of geometry in our scene here. This is going to be our Recon CS6 attachments. And I'll duplicate the original model, so then I can have a model set for the gun with the attachments and for the gun without the attachments. So I could add each of these individually to a model set by selecting the top level hierarchy and selecting to add a new model set. Or we can take a look at our new grouping feature. So if I add a subgroup to the models level, and this is the attachment subgroup, then I can just drag and drop these parts into this new subgroup, and this is giving you a warning that the live linking may break. That operation may fail if you do choose to use grouping. So we'll continue. So now I have two different models in my scene, and I'll apply each to a model set. So now what I can do is use the hotkey Shift-M to toggle through the two model sets that I just set up. Okay, so let's see, I'm going to duplicate my original model and continue to add some different colorways in the scene. So right click and select duplicate. Now if we go to our materials tab, we can see that we have some instancing of materials. So we've added a new feature in 4.2, or a new option I should say, in the advanced tab of preferences, which gives you now the ability to link materials of duplicate parts. So if I didn't want these instances to be created and I wanted all these materials to be linked for the duplicate models, then I can now select that in the preferences. But in this case, since I'll be applying a different colorway, it's okay that it's not linked. So we'll hide those two and now apply our color swatches from the Elite palette. Or looks like I got these swapped, but that's okay. So just drag and drop. Okay. Okay. And we'll do this again for the next color. So this guy actually only had 2 different materials on it, so it'll be a little different part breakup. So I'll go ahead and link these materials by pressing Shift left click, Shift right click, and just go ahead and link all of these to make them that clear green. We'll keep that orange in the scene. Okay, so then let's make this into a clear plastic. Should have saved. Okay, let me quickly duplicate and reapply my colorways. Okay, so again, making this into a clear plastic, we have the material type as a plastic. We want to make sure our specular is set to white so we get those nice reflections. And then if we click on the advanced drop-down menu, we now have the option for diffuse transmission and specular transmission. And actually, although we want this to be a green clear plastic, we're actually not going to introduce the green to the diffuse material because we want this we want the material to be transparent and to absorb all colors of light. So we'll change the diffuse to a black, and then our specular transmission, the light that's allowed to pass through the material, will actually make that our green. So now we can get a nice rich clear plastic. Making sure we go to our settings and turn on global illumination, and we might want to increase our ray bounces a little bit just to clear up some of those edges. So now I want to see a little more light scattering in the surface, so I'll add just some gray value to my diffuse transmission here. See, that lightens up the plastic a bit and just adds some more light scattering there. Okay, so we're almost ready to crank out some renderings. Let me reapply these to their model sets first. Keep in mind that model sets is a KeyShot Pro feature. Okay, so now that we have our model set set, we can use Shift M to toggle through our variations. And let's go over to our settings tab to set the real-time resolution. Now you'll notice a presets drop down for our real-time resolution, so I can lock the aspect and change this to 1920 by 1080 since this will be produced for the web. And I want to go ahead and set up some different view sets that I'll crank out and add to the render queue. So let's start with just a basic orthographic side view. Okay, let's dial in the environment a little bit. If we go to our Environments tab, I want to show just a white color in the background. And in this case, I'll actually remove the ground shadows so we get that nice, clear side view. So let's find an environment that will help convey these materials a little better. Something with some higher contrast. The light tint screen is always one of my go-tos. You get some nice soft highlights. I'm not going to focus on setting up lighting in this webinar, so this is okay for now. If we go over to our camera tab, let's go ahead and create a new view set for this side view. So view sets are also a pro feature. If we go up to add a new camera, you can also add a new view set, and the view set is going to save all the camera parameters as well as the environment parameters. Name that orthographic side view, and then go ahead and set up a front 3/4 and a rear 3/4 perspective. So I'm going to increase the perspective a little bit so it's not so for view sets, I can rotate the environment, change out another environment, save another view set, and it'll be independent of the last one I set up. So in this case, this top surface is looking a little on the dark side, so maybe I'll just add a quick highlight to that. The HDR editor is a pro feature as well. We can go to add highlight and then click in the scene where we want that light to be directed. Okay, and save that out. Close out of that, and then go ahead and add a new view set for rear 3/4. Okay, now let's do the same for front 3/4. Add a new view set and save it out. So now using Shift N, we can toggle through our 3 view sets we've set up. Let me remove this camera 1. So now Shift N will toggle through our saved view sets. Let me save this file. Okay. Alright, so now we can toggle through our model sets as well as our view sets, and we can go ahead and start adding these to the queue. So let's start with our traditional colorway. Select the render dialog. Set this image to be 1920 by 1080. And select add to the queue just to make sure our quality settings are okay. These default settings will be fine for this case. We don't have any detailed textures applied that are going to require more samples, so this will be okay. So we'll output. We can also select to, say, output a clown pass with each of these if we want some further adjustment in post. So then let's add that to the queue. You can see that it was added to the queue. Then we can switch up our model set, add to the queue. Again, switch the model set and add to the queue. So you can verify that those images were added to the queue, and if you hover over each of those, it's going to show you the thumbnail. So then we can change our view set to our rear 3/4, and we can add each of these to the queue as well. So using model sets and view sets is a really quick way to just get your different variations, different configurations, toggle through those using the hotkeys, and add them quickly to your render queue so you can process it and get busy working on other stuff. And the same process for the front 3/4. Okay, so then if we process this queue, we'll have each of these individual files render themselves out. You can go ahead and do whatever you need to do, come back, and you'll have your image files as well as the passes that you enabled on output. So that was my quick explanation of using colors and variations and configurations, creating custom color palettes and material libraries using some material templates along with model sets and view sets to quickly add to the queue a variety of different views and colors. So we have some time. Let's see if we can take a look at some questions and answer some of those. Josh, do you want to, or Bruno, I'm sorry, do you want to step in and let me know if there are any questions in particular that people have they'd like to see more explanation of? No questions. Okay, great. Well, I'm sure you guys are probably as busy as I am, so we can go ahead and end this webinar a little early, unless there are any other last questions. Okay, Dale asked if you can edit the items in the render queue. So I think what you mean is, can you change the quality settings of each of these that you've added to the queue? And the answer is no. So if you decide that you need to, say, change your material, say on this blue one, you actually have to either disable it or delete the job and then add a new job. Okay, somebody is asking about clown passes. So let's see, let's just go ahead and output this image with a clown pass. And we'll output that as a PNG so we can have an alpha transparency. And we'll just render that by default. Rob, that's correct. Model sets are a fast way to toggle through different groups or individual models. Okay, so our rendering is finished. I'll open up Photoshop. I will pause the KeyShot interface to free up some of that CPU. Okay, so I'm going to drag my two files into Photoshop. So I have my rendering and my clown pass. So what a clown pass is each of these different groups of materials have a completely flat shader applied to them. So now what you can do with this is use, say, the magic wand tool to select these groups of materials very quickly to create masks. So let me show you how to do that. If I select all, Control A, and copy, Control C, then when I go back over to this file, I will paste in place, so Control Shift V. So now I know that these layers are aligned exactly with each other. And then I can take a look at my image and say I wanted this yellow to be a little more saturated. I can go to my clown pass and select it with the magic wand tool. Add this little bit in the R. And then I can create a new layer that only contains that part or that material, and I can go ahead and add an adjustment layer using the previous layer as the clipping mask. Okay, so then I can then increase the saturation or even change the hue of that part. So this would be another way to do some real quick color studies, and you can quickly see what that would look like in different colors. And then if you notice, there might be a slight matting to your part here, so then you can select this layer, go up to Layer, Matting, Defringe by 1 pixel, and well, we're seeing the yellow coming through a little bit. Okay. Alright, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for attending. Once again, I apologize about Tuesday, but see you again next month. Bye.